Thank you, Barb, for having me. I learned about this space because there's a local Islamic leader named Mahmoud who did a talk here. Was it March or April? About
it was April.
Yeah, it was after the shootings at the mosque in Christchurch in New Zealand. He did a talk on Islamophobia here. Unfortunately, I wasn't here for the talk, but he was familiar with the space and said this would be a great venue to give this talk. So, I had recently gone on a peace delegation to Iran. So thank you, Barb, and we met and spoke, and she was very open to this, so I appreciate it. So again, my name's Amber Gilewski, for those of you who don't know me, and everything I think in terms of semesters, because I teach, last semester from February to March, I went on a 10-day peace delegation to Iran with CODEPINK. If you're not familiar with CODEPINK, the co-director of CODEPINK is sitting right here, my friend Ariel Gold, but they are an NGO based out of DC, a women-led anti-war organization. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, Ariel, but in short. So I went on a peace delegation with them to Iran. I'm going to talk about the purpose of the trip, the different people we met with. I'll show you some pictures. I did not come up with that title. Barb just told me that someone that does the website for this organization came up with that title for me, so that gave me a lot of pressure to include more beautiful pictures. So last night and yesterday I was adding like 20 more slides to show you beautiful Iran. So towards the end I'll show you more pictures. I also have some short videos in between of music and of when we met people at the Tehran Peace Museum. So, and thanks to my husband for the tech support because he set all of this up. Welcome. Salam. So the reasons for going on the trip, again, one of our main focus was to learn about the impact of the U.S. withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal, and also the impact of the U.S. sanctions on the Iranian people, which they've had sanctions against them in some form or another from the U.S. for the past 40 years. So we wanted to meet people one-on-one to find out, what was life like for them, under these conditions. The impacts of the travel ban. We met with people and learned, how they were separated from their family because of the travel ban, or the Muslim ban, as we hear it called in our country. We also visited some historical and cultural sites. I'll show you some pictures of that, and really got to meet people on the ground. We also got to meet some pretty important people, and we never knew what was going to happen until that day, who we were meeting with, because meetings might get changed or rescheduled, or we had to get permission for everything. We weren't necessarily going there to be critical of the Iranian government. It doesn't mean we agree with the Iranian government, but our purpose was to see things from how our government has been impacting the people there. Okay. So the very first day we were there, we woke up and learned that we were meeting with the Iran Foreign Minister, Javad Zarif, which was a pretty miraculous meeting. I think he was supposed to be in Geneva or something that day, and something happened different with his plans, and he could meet with us. We met with him for 90 minutes. He talked with us for 90 minutes. He opened it up first. If we wanted questions, then he spoke, then he took more questions after. And I didn't realize this, and I don't know if that many of us on the delegation realized this, but he actually had lived in the United States for a significant portion of time, and he received, all from high school up until his PhD, received an American education. So he's very familiar with the American education system, the Iranian education system. He said the American education system is more analytical in focus. Iran's more historically focused, and with 7,000 years of history, it's not surprising why. But we had a really interesting talk with him. He told us how he had met with, I think, John Kerry over 50 times to, work out and hammer away the details on the Iran nuclear deal. And he also told us about a meeting he had with John Kerry. This was, I think, in 2015, about a ceasefire in Yemen that they were trying to work on. And I think there was a meeting with someone from Saudi Arabia as well. And it looked like there was an agreement to a ceasefire. Then at the last minute, Saudi Arabia, he told us, reneged on that. And then he was pretty upset about this. He said in the news that Obama then blamed Iran for interfering in Yemen, okay, when really it was Saudi Arabia that kind of had backed out of what was agreed to because they believed they could get a military victory in like 3 weeks. And he's like, no way would they get a military victory in 3 weeks in Yemen. So he told us, the pain of that meeting and what came out of that. He also told us that, prior to, he gave us some statistics, prior to us backing out of the Iran nuclear deal, or I should say Trump backing out of it, that people were pretty optimistic, at that time. Trying to look for my numbers. But he said today only 51% of Iranians believe we should remain in the nuclear deal. Yeah, but when they signed the agreement, over 80% believed, that it would make a difference. And now the numbers have really changed, where maybe only 51% agree that they should still stay in. So it was a pretty powerful meeting. An interesting quote I have from him, I have all my notes here, that I want to read to you. And if anyone wants to see any of this, the script of our meeting with him is on CODEPINK's website, so you can see it. It was 90 minutes. But one thing I thought was really interesting, he told our delegation, the U.S. difficulty with Iran is not because of the region, not because of human rights, not because of weapons, not because of the nuclear issue. It's because we decided to be independent. That's it. That's our biggest crime. Iranians are resilient people who will resist the arbitrary actions of the Trump administration in dumping the nuclear agreement and intimidating European partners from honoring the commitments of the agreement to loosening sanctions. So, he had a lot to say about this that I thought was pretty important. And like I said, if you want the entire 90-minute meeting with him, you can go on CODEPINK's website, and I have it up here as well. And I can give you the URL later if you're interested. Okay. But this is a picture of us with him, and Medea is right here. She's the co-founder of CODEPINK, and she wrote the book that you saw out front. She wrote a book about Iran. So if anyone wants to check it out, it's out front. And this is Ann Wright, who is also the co-leader of the trip and a former U.S. diplomat. And she, I forget what year it was, maybe you can remind me of this, Ariel. She, when she was involved in Congress, she resigned.
She was a member, she was a U.S. Army colonel and then a diplomat for
right.
the State Department and resigned in opposition to the Iraq War.
Thank you. So she had, with her military background, and she's part of Veterans for Peace, she had a lot to bring to the table in our meetings as well. So we also, the same day, that evening, we went to the University of Tehran. They had a press conference set up. There was, people from all over. There was a panel of people, including Medea, and this is Professor Fawad Izzadi, who teaches about U.S.-Iran relations in their World Studies Department. And there's a couple other professors up there as well. It was a pretty lively discussion. There was many PhD students in the audience as well, mostly women. And they expressed concern about the travel ban and not being able to come to the United States. Also, they told us about problems getting English books. Because of the sanctions, Amazon can't send them books. You can't mail books there. So there's really like a book embargo. So, we had decided at that time, maybe we'll do a book drive, see if we can get books to them for their World Studies Department, English books. They particularly wanted things on U.S. politics and history, since that's what the professor taught about, and books that they really wanted to get their hands on. So that's something we're kind of working with. It can be complicated getting the books in, that's all I'll say. But I was able to get a couple progressive publishers to donate some books. And I think, is the fundraiser still live on the website? There's a fundraiser for the Books Not Bomb book drive on the CODEPINK website if anyone wants to check it out and donate money. But we're looking through other avenues, maybe sending the books through Europe and sending it there, because we can't send anything directly to them. So that's something we're working on. Something else that I thought was interesting, and when I give this talk or I talk to people about Iran, there's always a question about women or women's rights and things like that. Some of the women, the PhD students, and they told us there's actually more female students than male students. Some of the PhD students felt pretty strongly that they do not need to be saved by Americans, or they can advocate for themselves, within the means of their country and doing what they want to do. That also mirrored the response when I was on the plane to Tehran. I sat next to an Iranian American who had lived in the United States for 30 years. He went back once or twice a year to visit his mother, and he saw I had a CODEPINK button on. He was really curious, and I told him why I was going to Iran, and as a women-led organization. And he's like, wow, he's like, that's really interesting. He didn't use the word revolution, but he did say he believes the next big changes that are going to happen in Iran are going to be led by women. I thought that was really interesting what he said, and what the female PhD students at the University of Tehran told us as well. And I have not read this book yet, but a friend of mine who is a Middle Eastern studies scholar, she recommended this to me, and it's Do Muslim Women Need Saving? And so I'm looking forward to reading this, but I think it's probably along the lines of what they were trying to say when I was there. Another place that we visited was a school for street children. These are children that maybe come from families that are poor, or their parents might be drug addicted. There's a large refugee population. I think they told us 40% of their students were Afghani refugees at the school. But it was a really amazing school. Some people there are described as kind of like a Montessori feel to it, I guess. I don't have children, so I don't really know all of what they do. But it was really, the students were really creative, really engaged. This one young girl was actually interviewing one of our delegates, and she had some pretty interesting questions, like, what do you think of our school? How does it make you feel? She sounded like a little psychologist, with some really deep questions, for our delegate. Another thing they showed us, for shy students, this is something, this little frame that they can bring down from the wall and using as a TV for shy students so they feel more comfortable, speaking in public. They also sang some lovely songs to us and showed us all around. We got to meet a school psychologist while we were there. He had tried to come to the U.S., I think, 5 years ago, but was unable to, for everything that's going on here. But he said that our visit really, kind of gave him hope, and he felt like he's making a difference, at the school and working with these children. So that was a really powerful visit. And we had all these little stickers that said, Peace with Iran and CODEPINK on it, written in English and Farsi. And the kids love the stickers. So they're always coming up to us and getting the stickers, sticking them on themselves, then wanting more stickers. So they were very excited by the stickers. And that, I think we probably had thousands of stickers. And that was really, and I'll show you pictures later of people with the stickers. It really was, kind of a bridge. People understood why we were there and wanted to talk to us. This was probably for me, and probably many of us, this is probably the most powerful part of the trip for me. So we went to the Tehran Museum of Peace. This is a museum that's run by veterans of the Iran-Iraq War that happened from 1980 to 1988. You'll see I have a video I'm going to show you in a minute. But we went there, obviously, we're a peace group, so we went there, with our own agenda as far as, apologizing for things that our government was involved with. Starting with the U.S. supplying Saddam Hussein with chemical weapons that were used against the Iranian people during the Iran-Iraq War. Some of the tour guides, and you'll see them in the video I'm going to show you, were affected by mustard gas from the war. And again, the war ended in 1888, and they still have effects from the mustard gas. Some of them, their lungs, like one of the tour guides was constantly coughing it still had damaged his lungs. The other one, I think the one that you're going to see in the video, he talked about affecting his eyes. And because of the sanctions, he couldn't get medicine for his eyes. So you'd have to cut an onion to help his eyes water, to help with the damage that the mustard gas had on his eyes. And there's another video I'm going to show you where we also apologized for shooting down U.S. Air Flight 655, I believe in 1989. This is the video of the gentleman giving us the tour. I think he's talking about the effects on the eyes and showing some things in the background. So it's pretty short, but I'm going to show it to you.
My lungs for helping with breathing.
از نوع چشمم آسیب دیدم و قرار است که پیوند قرنی چشم انجام بشه.
And because of the damage to my eyes, I have to do the cornea and transplant.
تو جنگی که عراق به ما تحمیل کرد حدود 70,000 نفر ما الان مصدوم شیمیایی داریم که پرونده دارن و دارن درمان میشن.
Right now we have 70,000 people that are their treatment is ongoing after the war right now.
خب اینجا شما دارید میبینید اثراتی که عامل خردل رو چشم و ریه و پوست داره که نمونه عینش رو آقای سلیمی رو دیدیم.
As my colleague explained before, you can see the side effects of mustard agent. As you can see on Mr. Salimi and me.
بفرمایید جلوتر.
Okay, so.
Extensing my lungs.
Sorry. So this is, again, Barbara. You're going to see her in the next video. I'm showing you presenting a book that she created that had the names of 289 passengers killed in the Iran Air Flight 655, again, which was shot down by our military in 1989. And again, there are civilians flying over the Persian Gulf. I guess we thought it was something else, I don't know, but our country never officially apologized for it. The first George Bush, I think he was around that time, and he said, we will never apologize for this. So the U.S. government never formally apologized for this. So we went to apologize.
Peace with Iran.
و این تیم گروهی که می‌بینید در صلح با ایران هستش.
And we're all very committed to try to stop our government's malignment and threats toward the country of Iran.
واقعا تعهد هممون استثماری داریم نسبت به این هست که بتونیم اون تهدیدها و رفتارهای در واقع تهدیدآمیزی که آمریکا نسبت به ایران داره بتونیم کاهش بدیم.
And one of the things that we haven't acknowledged is the fact that Iran was, as Stephen mentioned, very complicit in the war between Iraq and Iran, but also a very tragic incident that happened with the American military Navy ship shooting down one of the civilian airliners.
علاوه بر که تصدیق می‌کنیم همونطور که همکارم گفتن اتفاقاتی که به صورت در واقع ضمنی و با لاپوشانی در دوره جنگ ایران و عراق انجام شده، یکی از فجایعی هم که اتفاق افتاد این بود که هواپیمای ایرانی در واقع توسط نیروی دریایی آمریکا مورد اصابت قرار گرفت.
And on coming here, we thought of perhaps giving a memory and an apology from the United States to the people of Iran for that.
و در مسیر داشتیم تصمیم گرفتیم که در واقع با یک چیزی بتونیم جبران بکنیم این رو نسبت به مردم ایران از طرف مردم آمریکا به خاطر اتفاقی که افتاد.
And Barbara Briggs-Letson, a great artist, has created a wonderful book that she would like to present.
خانم باربارا کتابی رو خودشون آماده کردن، هنرمند هستن و میخوان اون رو اهدا کنن به موزه.
And perhaps you could tell them about the names that you're looking at.
So there are many ways to apologize, and one is through creativity.
راه‌های زیادی برای عذرخواهی هست و یکیش خلاقیت میتونه خرج داد.
So I would like to read to you the beginning of this book, our group statement.
ابتدای این کتاب رو میخوام بخونم که در مورد همون پرواز هوایی که مورد اصابت بود.
We come to Iran from the United States of America as a people-to-people peace delegation.
ما از آمریکا به ایران اومدیم به عنوان در واقع خطاب مردم به مردم یک برنامه‌ای برای صلح.
with the hope that peace, friendship, and mutual respect will soon be a reality between our two countries.
با این امید که صلح، دوستی و احترام متقابل بتونه تبدیل به یک واقعیت عینی در روابط بین دو کشور بشه.
And that this relationship will continue far into the future.
و اینکه این ارتباط بتونه در آینده ادامه پیدا کنه.
From our hearts, we offer our sincere apology
ما از صمیم قلب صمیمانه عذرخواهی می‌کنیم
and express great remorse for the attack by the U.S. Vincennes on Iran Air Flight 655.
و پشیمانی خودمون رو از اون حمله به اون پرواز هوایی 655 که 289 نفر طی اون مردن اعلام می‌کنیم.
In which 289 persons died.
که 289 نفر فوت کردن.
We have not forgotten your pain, suffering, and loss.
ما درد شما رو، رنج شما رو و اون چیزی که از دست دادین رو فراموش نکردیم.
May peace flourish between the Iranian and American peoples.
با این آرزو که صلح بین مردم ایرانی و آمریکایی بتونه جوانه بزنه.
And may we together, for the future of humanity, resolve to end war and militarism.
و با این امید که بتونیم در کنار همدیگه برای آینده بشریت پایانی برای جنگ و نظامیگری داشته باشیم.
So the names of the 289 people who were killed in the air flight are here.
اسامی تمام کسانی که تو اون پرواز کشته شدن رو اینجا تک تک با خطاطی نوشتن.
And then knowing that the Iranian people very much appreciate poetry, there is a little bit of poetry in here.
و شما می‌دونید که ایرانیان به شعر علاقه‌مند هستن. یک قسمتی هم به شعر اختصاص پیدا کرده.
And the members of the delegation have written personal notes to the people of Iran.
و تمام اعضای این سفر همه نوت‌های خودشون رو به صورت شخصی نوشتن در انتهای این کتابچه.
So we hope that in this museum you will keep this and that the people of Iran will accept our apology and we will continue as friends.
امیدواریم که شما این رو در این موزه نگه داریم و این رو به عنوان یک عذرخواهی بپذیریم و این رو به مردم ایران هم بتونین انتقال بدید.
So after this happened, and I think there wasn't a dry eye in the room after this. One of our delegates, who's a Quaker, kind of gathered us all in a circle and we held hands and he sang some famous Quaker song. I don't know, it's some peace song. Some of you probably know this. I don't know this song. You probably know this song. But it was very powerful. And then that gentleman, the Quaker, and this gentleman, who's the director of the museum, had a really firm embrace. And the director told us that this was like the best day of his life and that he hopes when we come back in friendship and not to apologize for our governments. So actually next month, Ariel and I are co-leading a delegation back to Iran, and we are going back to that museum. So that seems powerful, and I hope to meet him again, inshallah. Oops, let me keep going on. This was an interesting tidbit I saw. A lot of, I guess, different groups visit this museum. I think we were the largest group. There's 28 of us, 28 Americans on this delegation. I think we were the largest group of Americans that they had ever had visit them at one time. When we were there, and different groups leave different tokens and things, and they have them displayed. The Syracuse Cultural Workers sticker was there. Make love, not war. Make art, not war. I thought that was really interesting. Wow, someone from Syracuse, or at least the stickers are here. So that was interesting to see in the museum. Another thing along the same lines, later that day, we visited a very large cemetery in Tehran, known as the Paradise of Zahra, and a specific section for martyrs in the cemetery. Again, martyrs of the Iran-Iraq War. We met this was very emotional too. This one mother came up to us crying, and and again, the war ended in 88. I forget when her son died, but she said she has visited the grave every day since he's died. And it's been decades now since he was deceased. But again, this was very powerful as well. visiting this. And this was inside, I believe, one of the mosques there as well. We took off our shoes and laid flowers, out over the graves. We also had dinner one night with some prominent Iranian women. This woman to the left, she was a gold medalist in kickboxing, and her struggle with sanctions is because she says the money she makes boxing, outside of is made outside of Iran, and she's not allowed to create a checking account to bring the money over. So she has problems getting money. She said she would love to fight someone from the United States, but she can't come here. So maybe they can meet in Canada or something. I don't know. But she had a problem, with economics for being able to get the money in. So there's difficulty with that. We also met, I forget which women they were, because I came to this dinner late, so I didn't meet all of the women directly myself, but there's a wife and a daughter of nuclear scientists who were killed by the Mossad, and there were several actresses there as well that we got to meet with. And there were some other women, I think, that weren't pictured here, but, again, that was an interesting meeting we had with some prominent Iranian women. I don't have a picture of this because we were not allowed to bring any devices in there, but we also went to Parliament and got to meet. There's several women in Parliament. I forget the exact number, but women are allowed to serve in Parliament there, and they had the highest number, I think, of women that they've had so far serving in Parliament. So we got to meet many of the women in Parliament as well. Just to talk about some additional effects of U.S. sanctions on Iran. We got to see very firsthand what the effects of the sanctions were. To the left, smiling in the hospital bed, is a well-known peace activist, David Hartsock, who is on our delegation. He, the very first day of the delegation, started to have chest pains. So luckily there was a doctor on our delegation. The doctor and him took a taxi and went to the hospital, and they're like, we need to keep you. You need to have an angioplasty. You need stents. We can't put you on a plane back to the U.S. or you might have a heart attack. So he was on the phone arguing with his insurance for 3 days, who refused to pay for his treatment because he was in Iran, and we have sanctions against them, so we can't exchange any money. Even us going there as delegates, we had to bring all cash to pay for our trip. They don't take our credit cards. Most Iranians don't even have credit cards. So carrying a lot of money on my person felt a little uncomfortable, but there was no other way. So the insurance company refused to pay for his treatment there. Again, we have no U.S. embassy. We don't have any diplomatic relations with Iran. So luckily, there were some nice women that he met from the Swiss embassy who was able to loan some money to him to pay for the surgery, and he just had to pay it back when he got back to the United States. But he was in the hospital the entire time we were there. He did get the angioplasty and the stents and had very good treatment. I think this was one of his doctors there to the right. But he, talking to the doctors and nurses all day, he got to learn about Iranians who didn't have the good fortune he did to have someone from the Swiss embassy loan him money, and people have died. Even though the sanctions are not supposed to affect food and medicine, it does, because other countries are afraid to do business with Iran because they're afraid of what the U.S. is going to do to them. And we've seen this with Trump, what he has done or threatened to do if other countries want to do business with Iran. So many people don't get the needed medicines. A good friend of mine that I made there from the trip, his mother has not had chemotherapy for months now because they can't get medicine. Another one of his relatives, who I think was only 38, died from lymphoma, a very treatable form of cancer, because he couldn't get the treatments. So Iranians are dying because they're not getting the medications that they need because of the effects of U.S. sanctions. Okay. Another thing, I included this picture. I don't know if I was going to want to take this picture, but I took this picture really quick of the Iran airplane that we flew from Shiraz to Tehran. They cannot get parts. They have Boeing airplanes. because of the sanctions, they can't get new parts for the planes from the US. So a lot of these planes are really old or is difficult to repair because they can't get the necessary parts. So I was very nervous on that flight. I'm not going to lie to you because I knew this and Medea talks about it in her book. I was like, woo, hope nothing happens with the plane because I know they can't repair this or there's more difficulty because some of these planes are older and they can't get the parts that are needed. So that was another effect of the US sanctions. Get into a happier moment here. I know I've given you a lot of doom and gloom, but there are some definite happy moments there. One of them, this is one of my favorite parts, and we're going back to this music museum as well, and I've kept in contact on Instagram with the two gentlemen right in front. I said, I'm coming back. This was the Esfahan Music Museum, and they're playing just absolutely beautiful Iranian music. I don't really know what all the instruments are, but the sound is just amazing. So I'm going to give you about a minute of this to enjoy. We should give them a round of applause. They're not here, but it was amazing. Oops, sorry. Another place that we visited, a very famous square, has several names. I was told by one of my friends, I use this name, I'm probably going to mispronounce it. I don't know if anyone can pronounce it better than me. Thank you. Well, I told one of my friends, he's like, the non-religious people call it Shah Square, because a lot of people in Iran are not religious, contrary to belief. So I've inadvertently offended some of my friends there, because I assume, oh, you're all celebrating these holidays, especially the religious ones. Like, no, we're not all celebrating these holidays. We're not all religious. So anyway, so it has a couple different names. This is the second largest public square after the Tiananmen Square in China. So it's a beautiful, beautiful square. There's, several beautiful mosques around there, a giant waterfall. I'll show you some pictures. Beautiful tile work, as you can see here. And I know Esfahan is known for their beautiful tile work like this. Here's another picture, again, just showing you, in the middle, the water fountain. Oh, this is, we also went to a rug shop while we were there. And I'm going to show you a short video here where this gentleman's describing how the rug was made, what it's made out of, how long, how many hours were put into it. Iran's famous for Persian rugs, of course. This is one of the few places you could take a credit card. They had a workaround, like, okay, our machine can run through another country because these rugs are hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, so no one's walking around with that much money on them. So one of the few places you could use the American credit card. But yeah, I'll play this very short video of him describing this rug to the right.
From the right side is the name of the city Isfahan, and then the name of the weaver. All the shining colors which is in the middle, which is mostly white color, these are silk, rest is lamb's wool. The base of Isfahan, also this part is silk. This is around 3 years work for one person.
Yeah, so they showed us rug after rug after rug. They gave us tea since we were in a private space. So women, when you visit there, you do have to wear compulsory hijab. It can be very loose. Your hair could be hanging out, you look very stylish. But when you're in public, you have to wear this. There are certain places, if you're in your hotel room, or sometimes if you're on the bus, they say you take it off. And since there was a private group of us, when we got to the rug shop, they shut the door, they gave us all tea, they're like, you can take off your hijab if you want. We looked at all these beautiful rugs that they showed us.
From the right side is the name of this.
Okay, this is just another picture from the square. Again, we had a lot of these banners with us, so people knew right away why we were there. And again, a lot of people from children to older adults would come up and want to take pictures with us, and we did a lot of photo ops. We really enjoyed meeting the people, and they enjoyed meeting us. Again, contrary to what our government would have us think, Iranians love American people. They might not like our government, or maybe even their own government, but they were very, very friendly, very hospitable to us. I felt very safe there. I visited 4 countries in the Middle East. Iran, actually, I felt the safest in compared to the other places I have visited. I didn't feel like anyone had any ill will towards me. It's a very safe country, particularly to foreigners. The crime rates are very low. So it was a great experience. This is another picture of us at the square, and again, we have a lot of pictures like this where we do a giant group shot and we all hold our signs, depending on where we are. Also, another famous thing at the square is the horse carriages that go around. So one of the delegates took this really nice picture. We also went to Persepolis in Fars province. And again, we took a great picture there too. Although I don't know if we're supposed to. I don't think they really want us to take pictures with all of our signs. I don't think they want to be involved as politically with that sort of thing. But we did get a little photo op there. Another interesting thing that happened to me there. Anyone that knows me knows I don't have children. I'm not kid tested, mother approved. Like I don't even know how to hold a baby. Okay, this couple came up to me out of the blue, and they're like, "Here, hold our baby." I don't even know if they said hold the baby. They just gave me the baby. And then they wanted to take a picture of me holding their baby. I didn't know what to do. I just held the baby and they took a picture. It was here. So that was a pretty funny story as well. They trusted me to hold their baby. This is really a beautiful place to visit. The tomb of Hafez, famous Iranian poet. Iranians really revered their poets. There's beautiful statues of poets. We might have statues of military figures or beautiful statues of poets there. And the tomb of Hafez in Shiraz, this is a place where people go as a date night or for entertainment. It's beautiful gardens. They have a lot of little shops around there. It's really a nice place. I was lucky enough to get a beautiful book of Hafez's poetry, and in English as well as Farsi, and then many different kinds you can get. But it was a really a nice experience. And someone that loves poetry, I took a lot of poetry classes going up, so I really in college, so I really enjoyed that. And we're going back there as well next month. This is a picture also in Shiraz of what's known as, I think, called the Pink Mosque. And the picture I had in the very first slide where you saw me standing with a lot of the pink tiles, that was from the Pink Mosque. This is inside, and absolutely stunning, beautiful tile work. I didn't include this picture, but if you lay down on the ground there, the ceiling has beautiful tile work. So you'll see a lot of people just laying on the ground taking pictures of the tile work on the ceiling as well. Again, I told you people loved our stickers, so we'd meet people, give them stickers. Several of them would pose with us. Here's another one. I think that's a pretty good shot. I didn't take some of these pictures, by the way. A lot of the delegates, we shared pictures in a file together so we all could use them. But these are beautiful pictures. We also went to the Iran Botanical Garden at Shiraz as well, and this is just kind of a panoramic shot that I took. Another one, when we were in Tehran, this is just a view of the Tehran city view from my hotel room. Tehran has a lot of traffic. It's very busy, a very densely populated place. I felt like I was in New York City, but even a little busier, you know, with the traffic. And the Tehranis that were on the tour with us, he was like, "Ooh, the traffic's terrible. It takes you hours to get anywhere." Yeah, it's a busy, bustling city, a beautiful city. You know, again, you see the mountains in the background. You know, it's just, you know, stunning. Here's another picture. Again, I didn't take this picture. Just another view of the city, and again of the Iranian flag. I didn't include this because you'd be here all day, but one thing I did include, but was pretty amazing, there's beautiful murals, you know, around the city. You know, some were obviously, you know, maybe political or religious or whatever. There were some critical of the United States, but there were murals, you know, all over the place. You know, so I thought it was kind of interesting. I read about, I wish I would have brought this article with me, but they have an Iranian version of Banksy, if everyone knows who Banksy is, who does the famous artwork. Well, they have an Iranian Banksy too. So I wonder if some of the beautiful and interesting political murals I saw, if they were from that person. This was an artist that was in the lobby of our hotel in Tehran. You know, he was there for a couple days, you know, just painting this beautiful, you know, picture of the ocean. He let me take his picture. So I thought that was pretty nice. Oh, here's another music, very even shorter kind of music clip I have for you. The first night we were there, they took us to a pretty fancy restaurant. And later, I don't know if anyone watches Parts Unknown with Anthony Bourdain, but he has an Iran episode. And I just rewatched it again with my husband the other day since I'm going back. And this guy was in the video back here. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy must be famous. He was in Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown. So I didn't realize that till after, but I'll show you. This is in a restaurant. And apparently this restaurant, they must have a lot of international people go there because they had a couple different musicians, and they had like a gentleman who's like the MC, and he's like, oh, we have like the USA over here. It's like USA in the house, or another country in the house. Like there was tables of different groups of people from various countries. So I'll just play this short music clip for you. Very short. The next one, because I'm like, I realized I didn't have any food pictures, and people always like to know about food. So this actually, and this is a short video clip because this came out on Fire for us. You know, there's a lot of kebab and rice dishes that they would serve us. So we were right next to the music being played, to the left of the stage over here, and that was what they brought us the very first night. This is just some other food from the markets. These are like roasted beets to the left, which you don't see that at the Ithaca Farmers Market. Okay, so that was really interesting. And again, a lot of, you know, olives and pickled goods here, and some vegetables. You know, they have wonderful bazaars, you know, that were amazing. You could spend days and days in some of these bazaars. This is just another picture in the bazaar with Barbara that you saw before presenting that book. Again, Medea Benjamin, co-founder of CODEPINK. Oh, Jackie, who actually used to live in Iran, and she spoke some Farsi. She lives, I think, in Oregon now. And then Jody Evans, correct? Who's the other co-founder of CODEPINK. And again, that was in one of the bazaars. Oh, we got a real big chuckle out of this one. So, again, we don't have an embassy there anymore, and they have turned the U.S. Embassy into a museum known as the U.S. Den of Espionage Museum, which I had to get this real quick. We were just driving by in the bus. They did not want us to visit that museum on this particular trip. I don't think that we had a lot of paparazzi, would you say, of people that we were in the media a lot while we were there, and I guess they didn't think it would look great, I'm assuming. So they didn't want us visiting the museum on this trip. Well, we are visiting it next month. It's on the itinerary, which I am excited about. And again, this is just some other pictures of the murals, of the lovely murals right next to it. but we thought this was hilarious as we drove by, and we all wanted to go. But again, I think because of the optics, they didn't think it was good. It would be a good look if we went there. Here's something else that we did the last night we were there. They took us to this bridge known as the Nature Bridge in Tehran. This was actually designed by a female, I think an architectural student. She was in her early 20s. I think there was some sort of contest where you could design a bridge, and then whoever the best design, they used it, and they used her design. And it's really beautiful, connecting, one side to the other over the highway. Inside, underneath, there's restaurants, or a little area for eating, I should say, of several kind of like a cafeteria style thing. So this is us, having some sorbet, our last night there before we left, at the Nature Bridge. But very, very beautiful, and again, you get a great view of Tehran. This is also another famous place. People love to get pictures, and this is I forget all the history of it. It's a newer building. It's the Azidi Tower, and a lot of people love to take pictures. This is someone taking a selfie of himself, and everyone poses with their cameras taking selfies. All the pictures you see, people are doing this pose. So that was an interesting little visit. And again, just some takeaways. I've mentioned some of these. Some of them I might not have mentioned. Again, the Iranian people definitely like the American people. Again, we didn't hear any anti-American sentiment towards us while we were there. Again, they might not like our government, but they certainly liked us. They can tell the difference between our government and the people. I know we don't always differentiate as well. I don't say we in this room, but collectively as Americans don't always see the difference between people and their governments. The Iranians want respect from the international community. The foreign minister told us, again, the problem he believes the U.S. has with Iran is about them wanting their independence. They are a sovereign nation. They want to be respected by the international community. And that's one of the big takeaways I took away. The Iranians are very proud people. Even someone on the tour said, even though there's sanctions here, I don't feel like it's a country that's under sanctions, because the Iranian people are so resilient and they're taking care of themselves. You don't really see signs of American imperialism there. You don't see like a McDonald's there. There's no KFC there. But there's some interesting knockoffs of all these places. So there's a fake Apple store or Kentucky Fried Chicken, but with slightly different words. People do their own thing, but there aren't these chains like when I've gone to other countries in the Middle East, there are American chains. There was not any here. They're their own independent sovereign people, and they want to be respected. They know the history of our U.S. interventions a lot better than we do, and the history of the wars. The Iran-Iraq War, again, that happened decades ago, but for them, that's like it happened yesterday. It's very much, for us, 100 years ago seems so far away, but for the Iranian people who have thousands and thousands of years of history, this is 100 years ago is like yesterday to them. So what happened in the 70s or the 80s is very recent history to them. Another interesting book I'd recommend, and whenever I bring this on the plane, I got people wanting to talk to me. It's called All the Shah's Men, An American Coup and the Roots of Middle East Terror, written by Stephen Kinzer. This tells about the CIA-led coup overthrow of the Iranian government in 1953. A lot of people like to focus on, what happened, in 1979 with the Iran hostage crisis, but they don't realize the history that led up to that. They don't understand America's part in that. Okay. Yeah. So this is a really good book because it goes back to that history that led up to that. So a very good book I'd recommend. And again, we met with students that want the opportunity to come to American universities, but again, extremely difficult, if not impossible, for many of them to get visas. Okay, but they want that opportunity. Even, I teach at the local community college, and I met an Iranian student there last semester, and I was like, she's like, oh, I'm going back. I think she was from Esfahan. She's like, I'm going back to Esfahan. I was like, oh, are we going to see you next semester? She's like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen if I'm going to be allowed to come back. Okay, so again, the privileges, even as Americans, it was kind of challenging getting a tourist visa, and there have been people, on these delegations that their visas were rejected to apply to go to Iran. But we still are very privileged where it's much easier. It's not illegal for us to go there. It's much easier for us to go there, and it's almost impossible for them to come to the United States. And again, we met several people who had been separated from family members, where they have family members here, and they're living there, and they can't get back to them, because of the ban that Trump has imposed. And again, this is just another group of young people I met. They saw my sign, like, let's all take pictures. We took pictures at a restaurant. This was what's what I'm looking for, like an eco tourism place that we went to, to see what it's like to have like some traditional Iranian food in a small village. That's where we are there. This is one of the tour guides, Sama, and us on the bus, taking pictures on our drive from Tehran to Esfahan and then to Shiraz. So what can you do? What's next? There are many, many things that you can do, and this is part of our hope by going on the trip, that we can come back and tell Americans what's going on there, the effects of the U.S. sanctions, what are some things we can do to influence our government. If some of you were talking to Ariel earlier, the sanctions that we've imposed on the Iranian people really help to keep the hardliners in place, okay? They really, and makes things tougher for the Iranian people. So things that we can do, at least from our end, what we can do to influence our government, there's several steps that can be made here. Obviously elevating the stories of those hurting from the U.S. sanctions. And again, there's many bills that are coming up to be voted on. There's, make sure amendments to prevent and end wars make it to the final version of the NDA, the National Security Defense Authorization Act. Ask members of Congress to make strong statements against war with Iran. There's a couple of bills that would prohibit the use of any funds to implement the Muslim ban that you can speak out on. But any of these things, if you go to CODEPINK.org, there's many, many different petitions you can sign, and all these things I mentioned, there's things on that website that you can check out. So with that, I don't know if anyone has any questions. Thank you for coming today and for listening on a Saturday where a Sunday where there's a lot to do in Ithaca. I appreciate you being here, because I know Porch Fest is going on right now. But if you have any questions for me, or if there's any specific questions for CODEPINK, Ariel is here and she works for them. She can answer that as well. Yes. Yeah. What inspires me? Well, it goes back to when I was 5. I went on a field trip to Washington, D.C. when I was like 5. I remember seeing homeless people living in Washington, D.C. under mounds and mounds of blankets. And I remember I was very upset. And I remember saying to my mom, like, how can there be homeless people in Washington, D.C.? That's where the president lives. I could not wrap my mind around that. So I think ever since then, I've been very concerned about anyone that's oppressed, anyone that's being maligned. Since I'm a professor, I'd like to, I teach psychology. I like to break stereotypes. I have been to other delegations. I've been to Israel, Palestine in 2015 on a peace delegation. On another project, not so much a delegation, but in collaborating with faculty in other places, I've been to Egypt and Lebanon, and again had my students work with students in Egypt. Now I have my students working with students in Mexico. I would eventually like my students working with students at the University of Tehran, if I can make the inroads there, to kind of, and basically any place that our country says, hey, we shouldn't be working with these people, or we have this negative image of, I want people to be able to meet those people themselves and form their own opinions. So I'm always about social justice, fairness, eliminating oppression. And actually, Ariel, I hadn't planned to go to Iran. Ariel posted on her Facebook page last year, she was originally going to go to Iran, and she posted something about it. And I was like, I really want to go. She ended up not going the first time, but I ended up going just because she posted that. And now we're both going back. So I don't know if that answers your question. So, yeah. Any other questions? I thought I saw some other hands. Yes.
What do the Iranian people want to do politically?
Ooh, that's a good question. We did, I mean, people have many different opinions, and even out in public when we would meet people, they would feel very open to tell us their opinions. Some people very much did not like their government and actually thought, like, yes, the sanctions are hurting us, but, the government's hurting us a lot worse, or maybe they're using the sanctions. They can blame things on the sanctions when they're really, there's some corrupt, it's corrupt governments. But again, everyone I'm sure is different. I'm sure some people would not feel comfortable. Everyone, is different as far as that goes. There's something else I was going to tell you as well.
But they didn't necessarily want regime change.
I don't know that was the case. Or if there is any change, they want to do it internally, not have like how we helped overthrow their government before. They don't want outsiders coming in. They want to work on it themselves. They don't need us to tell them what to do. What we can do is encourage our government to lift sanctions, because then that can help them, to not be isolated from the rest of the world, and they can, exchange things economically, culturally, whatever, travel, whatever. Okay, so they don't need us to, like I said, as some people point out, come in and save them, but we can help because we are imposing these things against them. The sanctions, they are not hurting the 1%. Even Trump recently imposed sanctions against the foreign minister, which is laughable, okay? But those are not the people that are being hurt. It's the middle class and the poor that are being hurt. Some people told us, like, it's affecting our day-to-day lives, like they're holding off getting married. They can't afford to get married, or they can't afford to buy a car, or maybe they can't afford to buy appliances like refrigerators, whatever. Those are the people that are being affected, not the regime, not the 1%. Okay? So I don't know if you want to add anything, if you know. Yeah. Any other questions?
Have any of the Democratic candidates and presidents spoken out about Iran?
You can talk about that, Ariel.
So all of the Democratic presidential candidates opposed the U.S. withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal, and all of them support the U.S. Going back into the deal. The question is, at this point, can we prevent a U.S. strike on Iran, because we continue to be on the brink of such? And even though Trump's temperament actually seems to be that he doesn't want a military intervention in Iran or anywhere, easily by mistake we can end up in one of these situations. So that's where some of these bills come in. Most of this legislation, the Udall bill and the amendment to the NDAA, invoke what's called the War Powers Resolution, which just states reality that the U.S. is not supposed to go to war without congressional approval. And we have a real chance with the NDAA to actually get this through, because by the end of the month, the NDAA should be finalized. The NDAA, because it funds the Pentagon, is considered a must-pass bill. The final version that gets negotiated will, in fact, land on Trump's desk and get that signature. And there's a number of important amendments to that bill that passed through the House, and so this is one of them. Many of the presidential candidates and many Democrats have spoken up, especially recently, reiterating the War Powers Resolution. Just reiterating, we cannot go to war, we don't have authorization. So they are on the right page there. The problem is that they're not actually the deciders in this case, aside from getting the War Powers Resolution into place. This is Trump, and it was Bolton, and forget the name of the new person who's replacing Bolton, who's nobody to be thrilled about. Those are really the deciders in this case, and Pompeo's also a decider. Yeah.
But we're sending troops to Saudi Arabia.
We're sending troops to Saudi Arabia right now. Yes, to protect Saudi oil.
Yes.
Which is a really dangerous endeavor.
Nima, right?
Yes,
Nima.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your experience.
Yeah. If I got anything wrong, please correct me. Please correct me.
Well, one question I had is why CODEPINK decided to speak with Gilewski. Because the theme of these peace delegations is where governments aren't necessarily representative positions of people, right?
Yeah.
So then why would you go and speak with the government? If that makes sense.
Do you want to answer that?
Take that.
Ariel gets
So-
that question a lot.
We meet with, as CODEPINK, we meet with government officials all the time, usually
Right.
U.S. government officials. And Zarif was particularly interesting for us to meet with because he was the man responsible for negotiating the Iran nuclear deal. And so as such, though, of course, there are things about him that I disagree with and numerous issues and so on, I would call him an excellent diplomat in terms of that role. And we wanted to express with him and have that conversation about what can be done, because while governments don't always represent the people, or usually don't, this is who negotiates, this is that end of the equation, other than the U.S., to try to obtain a peaceful solution. So we were actually quite thrilled to meet with him and talk about that process of negotiating the nuclear deal the first time and what prospects we might have moving forward.
And something very interesting, I didn't mention this earlier, but later that day, after we met him, the same day he tried to resign from his position, which he's done a couple times before. I think it's maybe more of a political play, but I mean, he's been criticized for trying to work with the U.S. and to negotiate. They're like, listen, you can't trust the U.S., don't negotiate with them, which is totally understandable, but maybe compared to some of the other ones, you know, he tries, would you say, is more moderate in some ways?
Moderate.
Yeah,
Or-
but he's been criticized by the hardliners in the government because of him trying to work and negotiate with the U.S. So yeah, he tried to resign, and they're like, "No, you're not allowed." So he's back. But it was interesting that same day he tried to resign from his position. So
Was there a connection?
I think it was just a coincidence. But we were like, "Oh my gosh, we're so lucky to have met with him, and now he's resigning." But then again, they're like, "You're not resigning. We don't accept your resignation." So yeah, and he's extremely popular in Iran, from my understanding, or at least things I've read about him. He most of the people seem to like him. So from what I've read, I don't know. Any other questions? Yes.
The media seems to often frame this as a Sunni Shia sort of issue, like religion is such a huge part of the conflict in that part of the world.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to take that. Yeah.
I mean, I would somewhat agree. Certainly the conflict between Saudi and Iran is Shia and Sunni, but at the same time I would have to say that I don't think things are usually about religion. This is about power and who's controlling resources and about money, and it becomes easy sometimes to split things along religious lines, but and to have sides form that way. But overall, I would really more say it's about power and
Resources.
power and resources, of course. Saudi Arabia is possibly the most repressive country on earth. And so you also have a country, one of the minorities that Saudi is very repressive against are the Shia minority in that country. So you end up with, across the Middle East, sort of alliances drawn in various ways.
And one thing, going back to the foreign minister and Saudi Arabia, that Foreign Minister Zarif said to us was, again, if we're as America, we say, we're so concerned about human rights and, human rights of Iranians, but yet we are such close bedfellows with Saudi Arabia, who has many human rights violations. Look what's happening in Yemen. And he even brought up the Khashoggi murder. He's like, but you care about human rights, but with Saudis, it's completely with Saudi Arabia, it's completely different. So really, it goes back to what Ariel said: money, power, resources, etc.
Are they clued into the evangelical ideas about Armageddon and the feeling that there are Americans who are pushing for?
That's not something we talk about. I feel like that's more in like Jerusalem. That was more.
Well, they've been meeting with Saudi now, the evangelical.
That's not something that came up. Yeah, that's not something that came up. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Were you mostly in a big group, or did you have a long time?
Great question. So there's 3 groups. If you're American or nationality, if you're American, British, or Canadian, you cannot travel independently to Iran. Again, these countries have no embassy, no diplomatic relationships with Iran. They want to make sure you're safe and things have to get approved. So we had to be part of a tour group You can't travel, like Europeans can backpack all over the place, do whatever they want, you know, but Americans cannot. We have to have our itinerary approved before we go. We were checked on throughout. We had people with us at all times. Sometimes there's a little bit of freedom, maybe at night if we're in a town, you go off to a restaurant or in the bazaar, but in general, like, no, you're not just going off on your own. We had to be part of the group. There was one day a woman, we could not find her for hours, and they were terrified. They were like, where is this woman? They went to her hotel room. She wasn't there, looked all over, and they were so panicked. She had just gone down to breakfast, been taking a long time. Then she came up, we kept missing her. She was fine, but they were in a panic when they could not find her. Did you want to say something, Catherine?
I was just wondering how long that has been a policy.
I don't know. I mean, again, since the late 70s, we've cut off and we've had sanctions against them. So, yeah, I can't speak to that time, but I know right now that's how it is. And maybe more recently it's been worse, especially with Trump. I don't know, but yeah, that's how travel is there now, at least. I don't know if you know anything else. Sorry about that.
I don't.
Yeah.
I would assume it might have lightened up during.
Yeah. Even
with Obama after the deal was signed, and
yeah,
gotten worse recently.
But even like any unauthorized visitors you would have, like there was someone on our delegation. Again, you can't use credit cards there. You have to exchange your U.S. dollars for the real. But there's some sort of card called a MA card you can get, which you can put money on to use like credit card there, just in Iran. Well, someone on our delegation had ordered this card and they deliver it to your hotel. Well, that put up a lot of red flags, like, who's this person? Why are they delivering? Why are you getting something delivered to you? And the authorities started, kind of looking at that, like anything like that, could look suspicious, I guess, or they would put up a red flag. Yes.
So do you have an Iranian stamp in your passport? And if so,
yeah,
when you
like a
came
sticker.
back, did you have any kind of problems? Or?
I personally didn't, but our two leaders, Medea and Ann Wright, the FBI was waiting for them, and they had to go through extra. They took their phones and they basically told them, like, if you don't give us your phone, your password, we're going to take it anyway. I don't know if there's anything else you want to speak to that, but I think
those were the only two.
Yeah.
And Anne has a military background.
Mm-hmm.
Medea's quite well known, so and we may or may not get somebody, which would probably be me, may or may not get that treatment on the way back.
And also when we were there, we did a lot of interviews with the media and with the press, and we blogged about the trip. They had our printouts of our blogs. We were very transparent about what we were doing. We had blogs of what we had done every day on the CODEPINK website, and they had printouts of the blogs of like everything we had done. And I think because Medea and Ann, they were a lot of the point people in the interviews, and they are so well known. That's probably why they were targeted. But the rest of us, even the other co-founder of CODEPINK, did not have any problem coming back.
But most likely, I'd say if anybody does, it'll be me.
Yeah.
And probably not anybody else.
Any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.